Welcome back, listeners, to the BizBlend podcast, where business wisdom meets personal growth, heart meets hustle. And I'm your host, Sana. And today, in this episode, this is a topic that is what exactly I do. It is podcasting as a business growth tool. Now, as someone running multiple shows under Healthy Mind by Avik, I know firsthand, listeners, how transformative, how soul nourishing, enriching podcasting can be. You get to know, you get to meet with different people across the world, you get to listen to their stories, you get to learn from them, you get to share your journey, your stories, your expertise, your insights. And is also, where you get to build meaningful connections and then, of course, a lasting brand. But behind every great show, there is a strategy. And today, we have got the perfect guest to walk us through it. Listeners, joining me is Alesia Galati. She's a podcast strategist and founder of Galati Media, which is a powerhouse agency that has launched and managed, hear this, 50 impactful podcasts. Now, Alicia brings not only expertise, but also hard working with value driven business, nonprofits, and thought leaders to amplify the voices that truly make a difference. So, with a background in manufacturing and supply chain, Alicia knows how to run a tight ship when it comes to the podcast workflows and strategy. And I'm really, really excited to know some of the secrets behind that if Alicia is open to share them. And and also, I love that her company is BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus owned, really bringing inclusive energy to this space. And that's what also is super, super important and essential for us as well. So, whether you are curious about podcasting, or you are ready to up level your show, stick with us because we are about to unlock some game changing insights behind what exactly goes with the podcasting. So, with that, Alicia, welcome to the show. And I hope the intro wasn't much long. And yeah, I'm really excited to have you with us.
Yes, thank you so much, Sana. I appreciate you, and I'm excited to jump right in.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful. Alicia, we'll talk about your podcasting journey. But before that, what got you into this world of podcasting? Uh, was there a brief moment or a moment of realization that yes, this is what I'm supposed to do, or it was something that you were meant to do, from this beginning?
Yeah, so I started listening to podcasts back in 2015, and I just fell in love with the medium. I was amazed that I could learn on the go to and from work during my commute while dropping my kiddo off at the daycare. And it just really blew my mind that I could do this and learn as I'm going. So, fell in love with podcasting, started dabbling a bit in the online space, doing some digital marketing here and there, lots of blogging during that time. And didn't really have any idea that I wanted to have my own podcast, but I did start guesting on podcasts back in,
Mhm.
I want to say late 2016, early 2017.
Okay.
And then finally in 2018, launched my first podcast. That one was all about what I did at my day job, supply chain,
Yeah.
manufacturing, best practices, things like that, and found I really did not like that topic at all because I was doing it at my day job and then talking about it on the podcast. So I stopped doing that one. I launched another one in 2019 with my sister where we talked about cults, and that one got a lot of traction. And we took it
Oh,
from the approach of sisters who have grown up in a cult and relating. So every week we would talk about a cult and then how it related to the one that we grew up in. And then
oh,
finally shared our story towards the end of that show. And we did that one for, I want to say, about a year. And then in 2020, I thought, I have all this digital marketing stuff that I've been doing for a while now. It'd
mhm.
been 5 years at that point. Let me see if I could release podcasts for other people. Right
Uh-huh.
around the same time, I lost my job due to COVID. I was let go in that, I wanna say second wave, and was like, "All right, universe, I hear you. Let's see if I can do this. Like, this is my nudge off the ledge." And from there, just started launching podcasts using the experience that I had having launched, 2 already, and then launched my own show in 2021, and since then have launched 2 more shows. So, I love
Wow.
podcasting, I love releasing my own shows, I love releasing shows for other people, and just really getting down to the strategy of it was my favorite part. But when I started, you asked the question, like, was this something that I always wanted to do? I actually have a lot of imposter syndrome around my voice because when I was a in my late teens, I got
Mhm.
really sick with some type of tuberculosis thing that was going around, and had it was due to mold and pretty much changed my entire voice. I used to sing in the choir and like do all this stuff. And I went from, if you know music, singing a soprano, which is like the highest level,
Yes.
all the way to singing with the guys in the tenor and the bass. And that was in the span of just a couple months. And so I had so much insecurity around my voice and the tone that had changed, and I had to overcome that in order to say, "You know what? Forget that. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to put my voice out there," and I have not stopped since.
Wow. Wow. That is, such a journey, Alicia. And um what do you think, because you started with podcasting, digital marketing when, when it was, at that point of boom, people were beginning to, blogging was not exactly into the mainstream. YouTube was growing. Then, people were gradually getting to know about podcasting, but before it was all about the radio. So what do you think is the biggest misconception people have when they decide to start a podcast? Probably maybe for their business or for to just share their personal journeys or messages or stories or anything.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest misconceptions is this idea that they're going to launch and then they're gonna be Joe Rogan, right? Which, I mean, no one really wants to be Joe Rogan at this point. But they think they're gonna be that level of notoriety where they're gonna be this big name, they're gonna be at the top of the charts, and I like to remind my clients, especially now, if you launch a podcast in 2025, 2026, right? Is a more saturated medium. It is not as saturated as, say, YouTube, but I want new podcasters to go into it with this idea of this is a slow growth platform. And I usually tell people if you are a business owner who needs cash quick, like
Mhm.
you need to keep your business afloat, which I know many of us are really struggling with businesses and digital businesses or small businesses right now, especially in the US. A podcast is probably not what you want to focus your energy on. You wanna focus your energy on getting in front of your ideal clients, like, quickly and getting that cash turnaround really quickly, get those cash injections into your business. Think of a podcast as kind of something that stews in the background for your audience to nurture them. Most of the people who come to work with me through the podcast have been listening for years. So,
Mhm.
you have to think in those terms of, like, am I building a brand? Am I building a journey, right, for these listeners to go through to then want to work with me? Now, if you're just sharing your own story, I would say one of the misconceptions is that you have to hide parts of yourself,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that that is doing a disservice to your listeners if you
Mm.
hide parts of yourself, and that's not to say, like, we need to, trauma dump, right, on our listeners. That's not at all what we should be doing,
Yeah.
but really being yourself, and that is gonna allow you I think this goes for business podcasters too. Like, what is the thing that sets you apart? What are those kind of boxes that you like to stand on that's going to set you apart from people who are also in your industry? And so I would say those are some things, some misconceptions that people tend to have as they get into the podcasting space now. It's a lot more difficult to get traction now than it was, 5 years ago,
Yeah,
but it's not impossible. It is still possible.
still possible. It's gonna take time, but it's not impossible. Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more with that, Alicia. And secondly, as you mentioned about that, people would still hesitate to share um, their true selves uh, right now because there is a lot of noise out there on the internet.
Yeah.
There's judgment, there's trolling, there is. I mean, it goes to levels which are unimaginable. So it can really create an impression on uh, anyone who is trying to uh, you know start with podcasting to share their journey, or in fact, even for entrepreneurs as well. So what do you suggest? I mean, do should they restrict themselves mindfully, or should they first understand what listeners would like to hear from me, or should they go all in, just without any filters, just share whatever your viewpoints are?
Yeah, so this is where and this is something that my company does that I don't see a lot of podcast production companies doing, and maybe this is just because my background is in manufacturing and supply chain and, like, creating processes, but I
Mhm.
also have a degree in marketing. So, when it comes to marketing anything and getting your podcast in front of the right people, you have to understand what that person and I like to think of it as one listener, right? Who is that
Oh,
one person who you want to listen to your podcast? What is it that they need to know? And when we do that initial market research, we're looking at what your competitors are doing, how you can stand out and be different, like we mentioned before,
mhm,
but getting super clear on what exactly your listener needs from you as a host, and then filtering the topics that you want to talk about and saying, does this belong on the podcast? So here's an example. And I like to use this as because I'm a mom and I don't know if you guys have ever sorry?
no, I mean, yeah, I could make a bit of the parallel. So, but
There you go.
yeah, please speak more, Alicia.
Yes. Okay. So I'm a mom and we take our kids to like a splash pad where it's almost like a sometimes a cement pad where then they have or if you've ever been to like a water park or a water theme park, that kind of thing, where they have the big bucket of water that they dump on everybody. But
Yes.
usually before it dumps on everybody, it goes through these little spinny things or it
Mhm,
goes through an extra funnel. And so I like to think of that big bucket as our brain, all the things that we could talk about. And so I could talk about, oh, I am a mom. I am
mhm.
a avid reader. I read about 250 books a year and none of them have to do with business.
Okay.
Yeah, I love podcasting. I am a business owner. I am a Black Latina. Am part of the LGBTQIA plus community, right? There's so many different facets
Yeah.
and parts of myself that I could pour into one show. But I have to remember why is the listener here? And in the case of my podcast, my listeners are there because they want to learn about podcasting from an impact standpoint and from a strategic standpoint. So,
Mm,
talking about that time when we fostered a dog might not be the place for that topic. Even though I want to talk about it, or I might say, oh, I've read this really good book. I want to tell everybody about it. My podcast might not be the right place for that. And running it through that filter of saying, okay, here are 5 kind of compartments for this show. I have podcast strategy, podcast content, podcast marketing, podcast monetization, and then mindset as my 5th bucket. Those are the buckets that podcast stuff goes into.
mm,
Anything outside of that And now I might be able to say a relatable story that ties into one of those topics, but if it's not a clear through line, I'm going to lose my audience. So, where can I talk about that stuff without talking about it on the podcast? So, maybe I want to talk about a book that I read recently. Okay, maybe that goes on my Instagram stories, or it goes into my Instagram feed or my LinkedIn feed or my Facebook feed, right? Like a place that I can be a little more Alicia and I don't have to be podcast host. And so I think that when you put that kind of effort in to your show, kind of planning ahead rather than, being like, "Oh, I need to have an episode due this week." Whoops. Then you'll be able to be a little more strategic and your listeners will keep coming back for the content, which I think is really important. Otherwise, you end up losing people, and that is not what we want as podcast hosts.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And as you mentioned about your background, manufacturing and supply chain, so it's really such a process heavy background. And from the fact I have been doing this, now for more than a year, there is a whole lot of stuff going behind podcasting. It's not just simply that I get a phone or a laptop, I get a mic, I have got everything, and yeah, that's it done. There's a lot of stuff going behind, putting up a single episode out there. It needs consistency, it needs discipline, it needs mindset, of course. um and then it needs strategic thinking of the processes, of the timelines, clear delegation of stuff. So uh what would you like to share some surprising insights from the fact that many of the podcasts, podcasters, when they start, probably in the 2-3 months, they are kind of overwhelmed by
Yeah.
the operations or the processes behind putting up a show. So, some of the interesting insights I would love to hear from you, and then how exactly your company is helping them to sort these kind of issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the concerning statistics that we see is that 90% of podcasters don't end up making it to 25 episodes. And I think the reason that that happens is because podcasting can be such a solitary
Mhm.
experience, even if you have guests on your show. They are not helping you produce the podcast. It is
Mhm.
up to you to edit, to create the graphics, to pull the videos, do all these different things to get your podcast out there. And so I would say one of the things to first do is consider, is there a way that you can batch the content in some way so that you're not scrambling for new episodes like I mentioned before. That was one of the things that I did wrong in my first podcast was I did
Mhm.
not have content ready to go. I had time to edit, but not time to create. Or maybe I got sick and then I had to skip a week because I didn't have anything that I could have, sat down and produced, but I was sick and my voice was not going to be podcast ready. So that would be the first thing, but then write down all the places that you're actually putting that effort towards, like where you're
Mhm.
actually sharing the podcast. And do you actually have to be sharing it in all these places? I think right now, a lot of podcasters are struggling with social media and where to make the most of, all right,
Right.
I created the podcast and now it's on Threads, it's on Instagram, it's on TikTok, it's on LinkedIn, it's on Facebook. It's on all of these places, but nobody is moving to actually listening to the podcast. And that can be really, really frustrating. So instead of doing all of those places, pick 1 to 2 platforms that you enjoy hanging out on. Okay. Your listener will find you there, but it's about being social on these social platforms. And I don't think just posting, hey, new episode is going to cut it anymore. We have to go a little deeper. So, one thing that I'm doing with one of my shows is when I have a guest on, I'm
Mhm.
asking very strategic questions of like, give me 3 steps to do something. Give
Mm.
me, your 5-step process to complete this that my listener can then take value from. And I like Instagram, so I create a carousel that's like 5 steps to maybe it's, write better copy for your podcast, right? And I have a guest on and I say with, and then I on the front, I have with this guest, step 1, and I list it out, step 2, list it out, etcetera. And then at the end, I say, tune into the full conversation to hear more. Now, what that did was it gave really great educational content on my social media for my listeners to save, to share. It might not translate to a ton of new listeners, but they are saving my content and the algorithm is enjoying that. So then when I share a video short of that episode, it pushes that even more so because that first content got lots of traction about this topic already. And so just being really strategic with that, and then that's it. Like, that is the only place that I'm putting my effort
Mhm.
personally, right? My team might put up little captions here and there just to get it on all the places, but that's where I'm putting the most effort. Then being a guest on other people's podcasts, that can count as one of your marketing strategies. Even if you don't want to be on social media, you can just podcast and guest on podcasts, and you will still grow your show. Because we like to think of this idea of, oh, well, in 5 years ago, I could have posted about my podcast and it would have turned into podcast listeners if I posted on Instagram. But the platforms are changing. People are not
Mm.
there so much for education or to find more things to consume. They're there for the dopamine hits. They're there for the videos, for whatever kinds of videos right, that they like to watch. And so, how can we just kind of grab their attention to keep us top of mind so then we can maybe in the DMs mention our podcasts, right? And so just
Mhm.
thinking about it a little more strategically, but guesting on podcasts, podcast listeners are already on their favorite podcast app. At the end, you can say, "Hey, you're on your podcast app. Go check me out on this other, this is my podcast. All you have to do is type in my name or type in the title, and there you go." That is going to translate. And we've seen clients double and triple their downloads doing this. That translates to avid podcast listeners finding you rather than people who are on Instagram who maybe don't even listen to podcasts.
Yeah, yeah. That is definitely, personally, if I'm going to take this as the most, useful insight for me, because what I believe is in today's scenario, in today's podcasting scenario, um, it cannot be just about the numbers or the downloads, just yes, it is one of the most important metric when you are strategizing about your podcasting, plans or something. But apart from the numbers and the downloads, I think it's more about understanding that what is the purpose of your podcasting, what kind of benefits your listeners are getting, what kind of takeaways. Let's say we take an example of just one listener, as you explained in the marketing part, in our conversation. And that's what I believe, because that is going to help you be in the game for a long time. It's not going to be just for a very short time, because that one listener may help you get 10 more listeners out there, because your message, your purpose, your story, or the platform you are creating is helping them, better themselves, help them get some ray of hope in their life as well, whether it's professionally or personally.
Yes, I definitely agree.
Brilliant, brilliant. Also, before we wrap up, Alicia, how do you see the future of podcasting here? I was reading somewhere in the LinkedIn today that even Netflix is trying to get into the video podcasting now. So, how do you see the future evolving here?
I'm really excited about the future of podcasting. Right now, we are seeing an increase in money going into podcasting, specifically around ads. Podcasters are not having to educate the sponsors so much about what a podcast is like they had to 5 years ago, which is really great. And we're also, I think, gonna see an increase in podcast hosts, which if you've been podcasting for a while, you might think, "Oh, no, more people in this space." But I think, rising tide lifts all boats. And if we're all getting new podcast listeners, I mean, the average podcast listener who, like, really loves podcasts and listens regularly, listens to about 9 shows a week. So there is room for all of us, I promise. So I we're gonna see some new podcasters in the space. I think especially in the marginalized communities because of the rise in censorship on social media, we're gonna see people finding a way to use their voice to talk about the things that really matter to them in a place where they won't get criminalized or censored because of their beliefs. So I'm really excited. So increase in voice, increase in money, and yeah, I mean, more and more we're seeing that podcasting is even more of a household thing, which is really cool that like the average person knows what a podcast is instead of what we had to do, years ago, people being like, a podcast, what? What's the app? What do I need to do? So I'm really excited about what's to come for podcasting in the next year or so.
Yeah, yeah. And I really, really agree that, podcasting provides a voice to everyone, because of course, that is the beauty here. So with that, Alicia, if our listeners would like to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yes. So you're on a podcast app and you can listen to my show, Podcasting Unlocked, or you can go to helpmypod.com and there's a free consultation there if you're curious about working with my company or trying to figure out, hey, I just need Alicia's help on figuring out what the next best thing is for me. Then you can check out all of the information over there as well.
Great. I'll have all the links and details in the show notes for our listeners to connect with you, Alicia. And thank you. Thank you so much for giving us, including me, these, refreshing, insightful, uh, you know, um, expertise or experiences. And I feel like we have peeled back the curtain on what it really takes to launch and sustain a podcast that makes a real impact out there. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Sana, for having me on your show. I appreciate you as well.
And for all the beautiful listeners out there, whether you are just getting started or looking to level up your show, I hope you are walking away with some real practical tips. And most importantly, this belief that your voice matters. So be sure to connect with Alicia and listen to her podcast and to check out her work. You can refer to the show notes along with this episode. And until next time, keep blending those big ideas with meaningful action. Thank you.